All right, so I'm going to talk about the new Material UI release, version 5. As of this recording, it was released 5 days ago, and I think it's pretty exciting. It's just keeps on improving, and I'm going to talk a little about how some of the changes and what direction they are going in with the new version. All right, so here's the tweet of version 5 releasing. And there are 3 highlights on this one. First one being migrating 9 components to Motion, which is of course the biggest news. And then the stack component, which is great to see. Also, other frameworks have been using or adding this type of component, so cool to see that one added in. It's gonna make the markup much simpler. And then last but not least, migrate documentation pages to use the new SX style and styles. So these are uh, ways of defining styles using emotion. I'm going to show you later more in depth what it means, and then of course the stack API. So meaning the stack component up here, right? And this one is 50% done. So let's talk a little bit about what it means that 9 new components are now changed to emotion. So before, if we just open up this documentation page from Material UI, we used to do some styling that looked like this, where you would create one big variable with all your different styles, and you would have to match these predefined keys for the different components, and then in your markup you would have to yeah, basically reference uh, the key here in your in your in these classes, so which is use styles up here, and then access and then put it as a class name. All right, that was the previous approach. Now the idea is to use emotion, so now things are a little bit different, and just to explain it better, I'm gonna create some examples. So I have a fresh project here, and I'm basically gonna pull in Material UI core next. So I'm adding this next here, so I'm getting the latest. And then I'm going to also get emotion slash react and emotion styled. So these 2 packages are needed with the new Material UI version. And let me just make sure I'm getting it right. Yeah, so I'm actually missing a ampersand here in front of emotion react. Let's pull down those 2 packages and continue. All right, after pulling those 2 packages, or 3 packages even, in, let's try just to render out a simple button just to see if everything is working. So let's import button here. All right, so that seemed to be working quite well. We do, in fact, get our button up here. So let's try to use emotion. So emotion is, or the button command has migrated to emotion. So now we should be able to access an SX property here. And from here, we can apply our styling. So let's say we want to add some margin top. We can do MT2. And you saw a button moved here. So that's working. Now, why is this so great? Like, why don't we just use the style tag here? So instead of writing SX, we could do style margin top, right? Or 20. That'll do the similar thing. Now, the smart thing here about SX, and you should probably read the motion documentation to get all the benefits, but basically here we can, first of all, we get these nice shorthands, right? But we can also add hover states, for example. So I could do hover. So if this one is hover, change it to orange, right? So if I hover over here, I should get that styling there. Instead of background color, I could do beachy color, which is cause a nice little shorthand there. Another benefit is, of course, we get access to the theme property. So instead of passing in an object directly here or a 2 here for our margin top, we could pass in a function and then expose theme, and then we can do, for example, theme, and our theme, we should have a spacing prop here. Here we can pass in 2, for example. So now we would align the styling with our theme values. So whenever we make spacing, we make sure that we use the theme values, which in Material UI is 8 pixels. So here we would actually get 16 pixels as our spacing. And just to double check that, we can inspect here and check out the style sheet if it should be margin top 12. Oh, sorry, 16. That's what I meant. Okay, cool. It's working. Now let's try to create some more components using this way of doing things. So another component that is great is the container component. Here we can wrap our button in a container. And perhaps we want this container to be also have some properties. Could be, we like to have background color of teal. Yeah, cool. That's also working good. Okay, now there's also another way of doing this. So instead of adding this SX prop, we also have access to something called experimental styled. Okay, so if I would go down here, I could make a cool button. I could call experimental styled here. Then pass in the component I want to style. So it could be a button component, right? And then here I could apply that styling. So let's say I want a button with a orange color. I want the text to be what with white perhaps. Okay, like this. If we save that now, next to our button here, we could put in our cool button. And to make it a little more correct, we should actually define the cool button up here. Like define it before we use it, right? And now we get the cool button here. The problem with our cool button is we don't have any label, so let's just add one. Okay. So if you have a lot of properties, you probably don't want to mess up the markup too much here, right? You would rather put it in a separate variable and then just put it in your markup like this. Yep. And similar with the SX prop, we also get access to the theme. So instead of returning a object here directly, we could access the theme here, right? And then do some sort of styling with that. Okay, cool. Now the next thing that is new is the stack component. So as you can see here, we have some buttons that are pretty close here, close to each other. It would be great if there was some spacing. So in the past, I would use a grid component, and then apply the container prop to that one, and then add some grid items. But now, if I just want to make a one-dimensional thing, row items or a column of items, it's much more convenient just to use the stack component. So let's grab that one and try to wrap it in here with our two buttons. Okay, so you can see our markup already changed, even though we didn't do too much. Now, the key prop here is going to be spacing. So usually when I have a list of items, you want it to have some sort of spacing. And I'm going to put in 2 here. And this 2 value is of course themed. So it's going to grab that 8 pixel and times it by 2. All right. And as you can see, the direction on this stack, or you can't really see it, but the direction is in fact column based. So if I want to change it, I could pass in a row here. And we could get them next to each other here with the spacing. Now, yeah, and just to verify how the spacing is done, you can see that we should have some margin on this one. Actually, sorry, it's applied on the second element. So there should be some margin left here somewhere. Yep, 16 pixels, so that's correct. Cool, that's a stack component. These are the ones who probably really want to mess around with, I believe. So quite simple and easy to use. Then, of course, the last one is migrating the docs. If you want to access the documentation, you can go to Material UI, go out on top here, select the version, and then check out the pre-release version 5 here. Okay, and as I said in the Twitter post, everything is updated to use either SX or the styled syntax. And whenever there's a row of items or column of items, stack is now being used where it makes sense. Okay. All right. I think that was all. Check out the new version, and if there are any questions, let me know.